I'm so thrilled to have you here today. Welcome to the Wharton People Analytics Conference.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're thrilled that we can make this work virtually. And I guess the place I want to start is I've watched you since I was a diver, which is a long time ago, and just marveled at your success. And I think a lot of people who have watched how extraordinary you are as a swimmer just assume you're a freak of nature.
I started swimming when I was 6 years old for a summer league swim team, the Palisades Porpoises, and I had to learn how to swim the strokes, and I think I DQ'd in 3 of the 5 events I swam in my first year-round swim meet because I didn't know how to swim the strokes correctly yet. And my first goal, the first goal I remember setting was when I was 6 or 7 years old. I think I was 6. It was my first summer of summer league swimming. My first goal was just to make it across the 25-meter pool without having to grab on the lane line.
At what point did this start to seem realistic to you? Because it sounds like in your first year, you were just figuring it out. You got good pretty quickly, though. You must have realized at some point, wait, this is kind of exciting. I'm achieving all these goals. I'm beating swimmers who are older than me. When did it start to become realistic?
Well, I think I was 8 when I first started breaking some county summer league records, and I think maybe 9 or 10 when I started breaking some of the local year-round swimming records. And I think a turning point for me was when I was 11 or 12. I broke my arm playing basketball in 4th grade in gym class. And at that time, I was playing basketball and soccer and swimming. I loved all those sports, but swimming was really my true love.
So you talk about swimming being your love, and that is such a strange word to apply to a sport like swimming, right? I remember in high school and college, just waiting in line between dives at diving practice, right? Where at least 96%, 97% of the time was just talking to my teammates. And then every once in a while you get on the board, you do a couple flips for 2 seconds and then more social time. Just marveling at how swimmers were able to stay focused, just going back and forth. Underwater, they can't talk to anyone, right? There's nothing else you can do. Was that not a slog for you? Did you enjoy that?
There are days where I guess at certain points it might feel really tough, but I feel like those moments are pretty quick for me now, or I've learned how to recover from a bad practice or something like that. Like bad practices used to really bother me and get to me, and I would, think about it the whole day if I had a bad practice. But I think was able to kind of shift that at times, and I always just come back to enjoying being with my teammates. And I know that it's a process and that there are going to be good days, there are going to be great days, there are going to be bad days or practices that are really tough. But that's all part of the big picture process of getting to that end goal. And it makes it even sweeter in the end when you can achieve it.
Are there other steps you take after a bad practice to keep yourself motivated?
Well, I guess one thing I do is I have a journal that I write in with all my practices. I've been doing that since I was 14 years old. It was actually because I wasn't very communicative with my coach at age 14, and he gave me this notebook and said, "Okay, Katie, you're gonna write down the practice, the main set, how you're feeling." I think he had me write from 1 to 10, like how I slept, how I ate, and just overall wellness, just so he would get a sense of how I was doing, because I wasn't very communicative with him. And it became this thing that I continued on even beyond when it was a requirement from my coach. And I've continued to do it just for myself, and it's sort of evolved over time. But it helps me keep track of things, and it helps me be able to look back on all the work I have put in that process. So before a big meet, I'll kind of shuffle through the pages of the practices I've done over the last 2 or 3 months since my last meet, and remind myself of the great work that I've put in, and even some of those tough days or bad days. And just kind of gives you that confidence moving forward. You sort of remember those really great sets or the times when you held a really great time for a set, and you want to look back and see it to motivate you to do that the next time. So it's kind of a nice resource for me. And then, as you said, it's a way to just keep track of some thoughts too. I think over the last 2 or 3 years, it's evolved into more of a holistic journal, not just a swimming journal where I write down 1 or 2 things I did that day or something I'm grateful for. That's something I've been doing more recently, just each day, what I'm grateful for. I always try to write down something special from the day. That's something that back 10 years ago, my coach back then always told me to try to do something special each day. It can be something really small, like if you're having a really bad practice, doing just really good flip turns. Or it could be swimming a time that you've never swum in practice before. That would be on the other side. So I try to write down something special thing I did that day, one thing I'm grateful for. I write down the practices, any notes about the practices, times I'm hitting, yardage, things like that. It's nice to look back on.
Yeah, I mean, as an organizational psychologist, there are a bunch of things that I think are incredibly interesting about that. The first one is that it sounds like you're simultaneously sort of living in the moment, but also stepping outside of the moment, which is a cool juxtaposition. The second thing that jumps out at me is you're able. This is very low tech, like this journal, right? But you're able to use it to both compete with your past self and also raise the bar for your future self.
For sure, yeah. And it's a place where I write down goals. I write down even just quotes, or if my coach says something encouraging to me, I'll write that down, because that's something that I know when I look back on it, I'll be like, yeah, like that felt really good to get that piece of feedback. Or I'll write down things about my stroke or what I'm thinking about. And that's really helpful, because sometimes if your stroke feels off for a couple of days, you want to look back and remember, oh, those are those trigger words that help me get back to that good stroke. So it's those kinds of things that are really helpful with that.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of a classic theory in psychology called action identification theory, that says we could take any action we are undertaking and we could break it down either in terms of the process or the purpose. And so at a very low level, you could describe what you're doing as like, I'm moving my arm in a stroke, right? And then you can move up a level and you could say, I'm trying to have a good practice. Or you could move up much further to the purpose and say, I'm trying to win another gold or set a world record. Do you find yourself toggling between those different levels of analysis, or is there one place that you like to live?
I think it is a combination of all of those. I think I mean, when I'm journaling, I think it's mostly just what happened that day and what I was thinking about in practice. If there's something really major that happened, but I think it's in practice where you're thinking more of those bigger, I guess, did you say purpose goals or purpose actions, where you're thinking of kind of the end result or the medal or the record or the time that you're trying to achieve, because a lot of the practice is built around swimming at pace for those kinds of times. So just reminding yourself of your competitors, your times, and what you're trying to achieve. I think that's what I'm thinking about during practice. Of course, there are times where you just have to think about the next repeat and getting through it. But I try to keep those goals in the back of my mind as much as I can.
Okay, so we talked a bunch about your process. Now I want to dig much more into your experience and what propels you and how you stay driven. So for a couple of years, I've had a hunch, and I'm going to make this into a hypothesis and test it. The hypothesis is that you have a competitive advantage because you joined a psychology research lab when you were an undergrad at Stanford. And of course, what we do in psychology is so important that it could elevate you to your next set of Olympic goals.
I've set really big goals for myself. I had these 3 goals that I was working towards for the Olympics. I had written them down on my pull buoy, which is a piece of equipment I use in swimming every day. I'd written 3 numbers, which signified my 3 goals, which only I really knew. And I really believed it. And I made it my reality. And one of the things we talked about in that class was, hey, what if I had made those goals 1 second faster? Would that belief and in those goals, would that have created my reality? Because what we talked about was just how spot on I hit those goals. I mean, I really hit them to the T, and they were pretty ambitious goals that I'd set years prior, and I ended up hitting them to the T. So it was interesting and fun to talk about that in the class and kind of think about how goals and motivators and things like that, even just coaches and other mentors and people like that, what their beliefs, what your beliefs can do to ultimately shape your outcomes.
So what gives your goals meaning now? Like you've won what, 5 Olympic golds, countless world championships. You're already widely recognized as the GOAT in your sport. Like why do you keep going, and what are you aiming for now?
Well, I have some specific goals for this year, and don't take it personally, Adam, but I don't share the specifics really until after I achieve them, if I achieve them. But one of the challenges of this year, this Olympics, is the addition of the 1500 free for women, which it's never been competed in at the Olympic level. It's been in every other meet, but not at the Olympics. So for me, that's been an exciting goal, an exciting kind of program change, in that I have that opportunity on the table, and it adds 3,000 meters to my schedule with prelims and finals. And that just makes things a little bit harder. And it's the same day as the 200 free. So that's kind of a day that I keep in mind when I'm training, that day where I have to swim the 1500 free and the 200 free an hour apart and try to do really well in both. So I have some goals for myself in so many events right now, which is kind of fun. I think in going into 2016, it was really just 3 events plus a relay, and the 3 events, the 200 free is the one that I swim in the relay. So that kind of combines with the relay. So now it's kind of like I have all these goals and I'm trying to sort of accomplish them as one. It's not like I want to only achieve my 200 free goal, but not my 1500 free goal. It's like I'm trying to hit them all.
So these secret goals you have, I'm not taking that personally at all. I'm actually taking it as a possible personal research project, because this is the exact opposite of what we tell people to do. If you want to increase goal commitment, you're supposed to go public with your goals, right? Bob Cialdini has written about this for years. The goal setting literature, there's a whole meta-analysis of the Locke and Latham experiments showing that when you tell other people your goals, then you start to get more attached to them. They become something that people expect of you, and that raises your motivation and your determination. So why do you like to keep them? I'm assuming they're not just for you. Your coaches probably know, right? But why do you not like to go more public with them?
Well, yeah, my coach knows my goals, and we talk about them. We talk about the process to get to those goals. My teammates don't know my specific goals. I think they know that I'm trying to make the Olympic team and I'm trying to, do really well. But I think it's just kind of been a thing in swimming where high-level Olympic swimmers just don't like sharing their specific goals. I mean, even at the lower levels too. I think I think at some point, there are already expectations. I mean, at least for me, there are already people saying like, oh, Katie is trying to swim X number of events at the Olympics. And so X number of golds are possible for her. Everyone already thinks, everyone else is setting goals for me, for themselves. And so I don't really like to feed any of that, in that if I put something out there, they're going to just be nailing or focusing in on those goals that I like to keep personally, because other people already have goals for me or expectations for me. So why give them something even more or specific, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. So
I haven't really thought about it that much, but I think that's really the inner reason why I don't like giving the very specific things.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It sounds like it maintains a sense of control, and it means you get to stay in charge, right? You have ownership over the goals as opposed to them being imposed on you by other people. I like that. I heard people call you the female Michael Phelps. And I found that so offensive. I was like, no, call him the male Katie Ledecky. Like, what? No. How did you react when you started hearing things like that? And how has your view shifted over time?
Honestly, I kind of considered it an honor that people would say that at times. You know, as I get older, I'm thinking of a little bit of legacy. I mean, I hope that young female swimmers are looking at me for how to swim, or for goal setting, for breaking my record someday, and things like that. And so I hope that I can inspire some young swimmers. We have such a great history of female distance swimming and female freestyle swimming in the US. I've been inspired by so many of them. I've become great friends with some Olympians from the 1960s and 70s. And I hope that someday I'm friends with some of these young girls that are coming up in the sport. And I hope that I'm providing a little bit of inspiration for them as they move through the sport.
You've provided more than a little bit, although I might edit a little bit and say, you're not just inspiring female swimmers, right? You're also inspiring young male swimmers, right? Who ought to have female role models.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And thank you. I hope that I'm inspiring some young swimmers. And
when we watch you in Tokyo on the starting block, what's going to be going through your head?
I think what's going to be going through my head in Tokyo is this past year. I think all the people that helped me through this pandemic and helped me extend the Olympic quad into 5 years, but also just all of the healthcare workers and the people that are making it possible for the world to be in a position to host an Olympics. I think, honestly, there's still that speculation and those questions out there of if the Olympics are going to be able to happen this summer. But I think things are looking good, and I think we will be there. And I think all of us are just going to be so grateful that we have that opportunity, because they very well could have been canceled last year, but thankfully they were postponed, and we have that opportunity in front of us. And, you know, I'm going to be thinking of the family that lent me their backyard pool to swim in for 3 months, and think of my family who, you know, I haven't seen in over a year. I know they're supporting me, but the FaceTimes with them have been great, and we've been keeping each other safe and really being as good as we can be about following the guidelines. So just all those people that have kind of put in that extra effort, that extra work to help us get to that point.
Well, we're going to be rooting for you, obviously, and just hugely grateful for you representing America and psychology, and now the Wharton People Analytics Conference. Katie, thank you so much for sharing your insight and your experience with us today. Such a treat to have you.
Thanks so much. It was fun chatting, and I hope that we'll meet sometime in person soon.